Very nice presentation, Dr. G. We have one question from Fernando Barroso Duarte. Would you consider what would you consider the most important point in the decision of transplant in sickles? Number of mutations and VAF?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think we don't have enough evidence to transplant the patients with CICAs. The data is not enough. Currently, even there is no FDA approved treatment for patients with CICAs. We have developed, clinical trials focusing on targeting type 2 mutation. And also I talked about the clinical trial to target the IL-1 beta. There are more clinical trials that are available at this moment, which is using the IDH1, IDH2 inhibitor to target patients with IDH1 and IDH2 mutation for patients with CHIP and CICAs. We definitely need a lot of data to see, long-term progression and overall survival, and then to determine whether patients, they should be transplanted or not. At this moment, I think, I talk about the three important things for patients who are at a significantly higher risk for progression. One is the number of the mutation, the VAF of the mutation, and also the combination. So it's not a single items that can determine that whether we should transplant these patients. It's all about the combination, and to see what are the mutations, especially their hotspots and how quickly the VAF will increase over time. So those are the things that are important. Short question for the transplant questions, we definitely need a lot of data and to determine whether the patient needs a transplant or not.
Okay, I have a personal question. In clinical practice, the distinction between CICAs and MDS is the really morphologic dysplasia. So with the same somatic mutations, you will diagnose CICAs if you don't see at least 10% of a morphologic dysplasia, and MDS if you do see. Do you think that is really reliable to base the distinction entirely on absence or presence of morphologic dysplasia?
Thank you so much, Dr. Cazzola. I think it is awesome questions. Currently to diagnose the CICAs or to rule out the patients has MDS, we still, very much rely on the bone marrow biopsy and then to look at the morphology. So currently, with my experience, we are still using the bone marrow biopsy. If the patient doesn't have enough, we don't see enough dysplasia, we still call these patients as a CICAs. But, we have in our group, we have several works and we look at the patients with CICAs and also low risk MDS. We find that, the mutation pattern and also the VAF are not significantly different from each other, even the overall survival. So I think this is a question to be elucidated in the future with the, international study group and to determine whether we still need to rely on the morphology and to determine whether patients have CICAs or MDS.
So we invite everybody to join your international collaboration.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much again, Dr. G.
Thank you so much.
I think because of time constraints, we're going to have to stop the questions. There are some other excellent questions that have come in, so maybe you can direct them directly to Dr. G. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer them by text or email.
Absolutely.
Oh, I've just learned we have time for one more. So there's a question from, will you expect vascular events will become target outcomes for treatment of CICAs?
Excellent question. I think in the near future, the vascular or cardiovascular disease will be an endpoint because, we can follow up these patients in a shorter term. I know Dr. Makwati is in my audience, the paper that he has looked at published in 2017 in Blood, the follow-up has, 10 years, a little bit. So now I think we need some, urgent study to see, what are the treatment and are effective to treat patients with CICAs. Because if we truly wait for patients, for 10 years, we wait for too long for the results to come out. So I think, cardiovascular disease or vascular disease are an excellent endpoint especially focus on, we have data from the CANTOS trial, which is using the canatumumab to target the IL-1 beta. I think cardiovascular disease, that endpoint will be a great endpoint for that study.